The courtroom was a tomb of silence, broken only by the sharp crack of the gavel as Judge Margaret Hensley delivered her verdict. "Elliot Carter, you are hereby sentenced to life without parole," she declared, her voice steady but her eyes betraying a flicker of unease. 18-year-old Elliot, a black teenager with a quiet strength, stood motionless, his hands cuffed, as the weight of a lifetime in prison crashed over him like a tidal wave. The charge was murder, a crime Elliot swore he didn't commit. The evidence was flimsy: a blurry security camera clip, a coerced witness statement, and a prosecutor who painted him as a dangerous thug to a jury eager to convict. Growing up in a rough Brooklyn neighborhood, Elliot had always been an easy target. A queer black kid who loved poetry and dreamed of becoming a lawyer. But now, in this sterile Manhattan courtroom in 2025, his dreams were ashes. As the bailiff moved to escort him out, Elliot's voice cut through the air, raw and defiant. "Your Honor, I'm innocent, and I want to call my dad." The room froze. Whispers rippled through the gallery. Judge Hensley's pen hovered over her notes. "Your father?" she asked, her tone sharp but curious. Elliot nodded, his jaw tight. "Yeah, the U.S. Attorney General, Marcus Carter." The revelation hit like a grenade. Marcus Carter, the nation's top law enforcement official, was a towering figure known for his unyielding stance on justice. Few knew he had a son, let alone one standing trial for murder. The judge's face paled, but she granted the call. As Elliot was led to a holding room, the weight of his words hung heavy, promising a storm that would shake the foundations of this case. Elliot sat in the dim holding cell, the phone pressed to his ear. Each ring felt like an eternity until Marcus's deep, familiar voice answered. "Elliot? What's wrong?" The concern was immediate, cutting through the static. Elliot's throat tightened. He hadn't spoken to his dad in months, not since their fight over Elliot coming out. Marcus had struggled to accept his son's truth, not out of hate but fear of a world that could be cruel to a black gay kid. Now, Elliot's voice cracked as he said, "Dad, they gave me life. I didn't do it." On the other end, Marcus was silent, but Elliot could hear the sharp intake of breath. "Where are you?" Marcus finally asked. "Manhattan Criminal Court. Dad, I need you." The line went quiet again, but Elliot knew his father was already moving. The weight of his position as Attorney General now, a weapon he'd wield to uncover the truth. Back in the courtroom, whispers turned to chaos. Reporters scrambled for their phones, sensing a story that could dominate headlines. Judge Hensley, a stern woman in her 50s with a reputation for fairness, felt the ground shift beneath her. She'd sentenced hundreds in her career, but this case, Elliot's case, gnawed at her. The evidence had been thin, the trial rushed. Had she made a mistake? Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Elliot's boyfriend, Javier Morales, sat on their shared apartment's worn couch, staring at the TV as news of the verdict broke. Javier, an 18-year-old Latino artist with a fire in his soul, had been Elliot's anchor since they met at a poetry slam 2 years ago. Their love was a quiet rebellion against a world that often rejected them. Javier's hands shook as he watched the headline, "Gay teen sentenced to life in controversial case." He grabbed his jacket and headed to the courthouse, determined to fight for the boy he loved. Marcus Carter arrived at the courthouse within the hour, his presence commanding the room. A tall black man in his late 40s, his tailored suit and steely gaze marked him as a force of nature. He demanded a meeting with Judge Hensley, who agreed, though her unease grew. In her chambers, Marcus didn't mince words. "My son is innocent, Your Honor. I want every piece of evidence re-examined. Now." Hensley, though rattled, held her ground. "Mr. Carter, I understand your position, but the trial was fair. The jury decided." Marcus leaned forward, his voice low but lethal. "Fair? My son was targeted for his race, his sexuality, his very existence. You know the system isn't always clean. Dig deeper." Reluctantly, Hensley agreed to a stay of execution on the sentence pending a review, but only if new evidence surfaced. Outside, Javier pushed through the growing crowd of protesters, many from the local LGBTQ+ community, holding signs that read, "Justice for Elliot" and "Love is not a crime." Their voices were a chorus of defiance, but Javier's heart was heavy. He'd seen Elliot's fear in the courtroom, the way his shoulders slumped as the verdict hit. Javier had promised to protect him, but now he felt helpless. As night fell, Elliot sat alone in his cell, scribbling poetry on a scrap of paper. The words flowed like a prayer. "They cage my body, but not my soul/love will rise. Make me whole." He thought of Javier, of their stolen moments in Prospect Park, of the life they'd planned together. He refused to let that dream die. The next morning, Marcus Carter assembled a team of investigators from his office, tasking them with dissecting Elliot's case. He knew the stakes: his son's life and his own reputation. Marcus had spent years building a career on justice, but his strained relationship with Elliot haunted him. He'd pushed his son away, fearing the world's cruelty, only to see that cruelty manifest in a courtroom. In Brooklyn, Javier wasn't waiting for the system to save Elliot. He reached out to a friend, Amara, a 25-year-old non-binary hacker with a knack for uncovering secrets. Amara, who used they/them pronouns, had grown up in the same neighborhood as Elliot and Javier, and they'd seen too many kids like them chewed up by the system. "Give me a lead," Amara said, their fingers already flying across the keyboard. Javier handed over everything he had: court documents, news clippings, and a gut feeling that the witness, a man named Derek Voss, had been pressured. Amara dug into Voss's digital footprint, uncovering a trail of payments from a shady LLC tied to a local gang. Voss, a wiry white man in his 30s, had testified that he saw Elliot shoot a rival gang member in a bodega, but the payments suggested Voss was bought. Amara shared the findings with Javier, who passed them to Marcus's team. The evidence was a spark, but they needed more to overturn the conviction. Meanwhile, Judge Hensley couldn't shake Elliot's case. Late at night, she pored over the trial transcripts, her coffee growing cold. The security footage was grainy, showing a figure in a hoodie that could have been anyone. The prosecution had leaned heavily on Voss's testimony, but now Hensley wondered if she'd been too quick to trust it. She called a meeting with the lead prosecutor, Sarah Klein, a sharp woman in her 40s known for her aggressive tactics. "Sarah, was there anything off about Voss?" Hensley asked. Klein shrugged, but her eyes darted away. "He was credible enough," she said, too quickly. Elliot's days in detention were a blur of gray walls and guarded hope. He clung to Javier's letters, smuggled in by a sympathetic guard. Javier wrote of their future, of painting murals together, of a world where they could love freely. Each word was a lifeline, pulling Elliot from despair. But the weight of his sentence pressed harder each day, and he began to doubt he'd ever be free. Marcus, meanwhile, faced his own battle. As Attorney General, he walked a tightrope, using his power to help Elliot without appearing to abuse it. The media was relentless, with headlines screaming "Attorney General's son a killer" and "Justice or nepotism?" Marcus ignored the noise, focusing on the new evidence Amara had uncovered. He confronted Voss in a tense interrogation, his voice calm but cutting. "Who paid you to lie, Derek?" Voss squirmed, his story unraveling. "I don't know what you're talking about," he muttered, but his fear was palpable. Javier and Amara kept digging, tracing the LLC to a gang leader named Rico Torres, a man with a history of framing rivals to settle scores. Rico had a vendetta against Elliot's cousin, who'd testified against him years ago. Elliot, it seemed, was collateral damage. Javier's heart raced as he shared the lead with Marcus's team. This was the break they needed. The courtroom reconvened for an emergency hearing, the air thick with tension. Marcus sat in the gallery, his face unreadable, while Javier stood outside with the protesters, their chants echoing through the windows. Inside, Elliot faced Judge Hensley again, his eyes burning with a mix of fear and defiance. The new evidence was presented. Amara's financial trail, Voss's inconsistent statements, and a sworn affidavit from a bodega clerk who claimed she saw someone else flee the scene. Prosecutor Klein fought back, arguing the evidence was circumstantial and accusing Marcus of manipulating the system. But Hensley was listening closely now, her doubt growing. She ordered Voss to testify again, and under Marcus's relentless questioning, Voss cracked. "Rico made me do it," he blurted, his voice shaking. "He said he'd kill my sister if I didn't pin it on the kid." The courtroom erupted, and Hensley called for order. Elliot's heart pounded as he watched the truth unfold. For the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. But Klein wasn't done. She doubled down, claiming Voss's recantation was coerced. The hearing stretched into the night, with Hensley wrestling over her decision. She knew overturning a conviction would spark backlash, but letting an innocent boy rot in prison was unthinkable. Outside, Javier clung to Amara, who'd become a sibling in this fight. "He's coming home, right?" Javier whispered. Amara squeezed their hand. "We're close, Javi. We're so close." The protesters, now numbering in the hundreds, lit candles, their glow a beacon of solidarity. Social media buzzed with Free Elliot, amplifying the case to a national stage. Marcus met with Elliot in private, the first time they'd been face-to-face since the trial began. The detention center's visiting room was cold, but Elliot's eyes were warm with tears. "I thought you didn't care," he said softly. Marcus's voice broke. "I've always cared, son. I was scared I couldn't protect you. I was wrong." They embraced, the weight of years of distance melting away. Marcus vowed to fight until Elliot was free, no matter the cost. Back in the courtroom, Hensley made her ruling. Pending a full investigation into Mr. Voss's testimony and the new evidence, I am granting a retrial for Elliot Carter. The gallery cheered, but Elliot remained stoic, knowing freedom was still a battle away. As he was led back to his cell, he caught Javier's eye through the courthouse window. Javier mouthed, "I love you," and Elliot's heart swelled. He wasn't alone. The retrial was set for 3 months later, giving Marcus's team time to build an airtight case. They uncovered more security footage from a nearby ATM showing a different suspect, and a second witness who corroborated the bodega clerk story. Rico Torres was arrested, his empire crumbling under the weight of the investigation. But the media frenzy grew, with some outlets accusing Marcus of overstepping, while others hailed Elliot as a symbol of a broken system. Javier threw himself into activism, organizing rallies and speaking at community centers. His art became a voice for Elliot, his murals of 2 hands clasped under a rainbow flag popping up across Brooklyn. Each stroke was a promise to Elliot. "I'm fighting for us." Amara, meanwhile, hacked into Rico's communications, finding texts that explicitly mentioned framing Elliot. The evidence was damning. Elliot, still in detention, found strength in small acts of defiance. He led a poetry workshop for other inmates, his words sparking hope in a place designed to crush it. One poem, dedicated to Javier, went viral after a guard leaked it online. "Your love is my freedom, my fight, my home." The world began to see Elliot not as a criminal, but as a young man caught in a web of injustice. Judge Hensley, haunted by her initial ruling, met privately with Marcus. "I failed your son," she admitted, her voice heavy. "I trusted the system too blindly." Marcus nodded, his anger softened by her honesty. "Fix it now," he said. Hensley vowed to ensure the retrial was fair, even as Klein prepared to fight harder, her career on the line. The retrial was a spectacle broadcast live across the nation. Elliot took the stand, his voice steady as he recounted his truth. His love for Javier, his dreams, his innocence. The jury, diverse and attentive, listened closely. Marcus's team presented the new evidence, dismantling Klein's case piece by piece. Voss, now a cooperating witness, testified against Rico, sealing the gang leader's fate. Javier sat in the front row, his heart in his throat. He'd brought a sketchbook, drawing Elliot's face to keep himself grounded. When Elliot looked at him, their eyes locked, a silent promise passing between them. The protesters outside chanted louder, their voices a heartbeat for justice. On the final day of the retrial, the jury deliberated for only 4 hours. The courtroom was packed, the air electric with anticipation. Judge Hensley took her place, her face solemn but resolute. "Elliot Carter," she began, "the jury finds you not guilty on all charges." The room exploded in cheers. Elliot's knees buckled, and he sank into his chair, tears streaming down his face. Marcus rushed to him, pulling him into a fierce hug. "You're coming home, son." Outside, Javier waited, his heart racing. When Elliot emerged, free at last, Javier ran to him, their embrace a collision of love and relief. The crowd roared, cameras flashing, but for Elliot and Javier, the world was just the two of them. "I never gave up on you," Javier whispered. Elliot smiled, his voice soft. "I know. You're my home." The aftermath was a reckoning. Marcus launched a task force to investigate wrongful convictions, focusing on marginalized communities. Judge Hensley retired, dedicating her life to criminal justice reform. Javier's murals became symbols of hope, and he and Elliot opened a community center in Brooklyn, a safe space for queer youth to dream without fear. Years later, Elliot stood at a podium, now a law student, speaking at a rally for equality. Javier stood beside him, their hands entwined. "Love is our strength," Elliot said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "It's what kept me alive, what brought me home, and it's what will change the world." The crowd cheered, their voices a testament to a love that had defied a system, a sentence, and a world that tried to break them. The sunset behind them painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, a reminder of the moment they'd held on to through it all, their love, unyielding, unbreakable, eternal.